I'm ordinarily not somebody who is given to drama or being inconsiderate. I like to think of myself as a reasonably laid-back person, reasonably liberal-minded, within reason, of course. So when I heard this story, I found it completely absurd and baffling. It's not a Nigerian situation, but I think it's something that most of us can relate to. I was watching a program the other day, a foreign program, and it was a talk. It was a talk show, and they were talking about this lady who had married a widower whose wife had passed on some time back, and his own way of honoring her was that, for one thing, he had his wedding band around a necklace which he always had on his neck. I get that completely. But you can imagine that somebody who is that committed to somebody who has died will probably have that, around his neck all the time. Usually wedding bands are, made of some kind of precious material that will not fade, either gold, silver, platinum, and so on, so that you can have them indefinitely or for as long as you want to keep them on. So anyway, he always has, his wife's wedding band on his neck as a sign of, the love he had, or in this case still has, for his wife, his deceased wife. When I hear stories like this, I try to inject myself into the situation and see how I would handle it. And for me, I thought to myself, okay, not bad. I can accommodate that. It's something I could handle. You want to honor, the memory of the deceased spouse. However, this lady got pregnant. That's the wife, the new wife, the one that's alive, got pregnant, and the husband and his family are unhappy with her because she has refused the possibility of naming her unborn child after the dead wife. That is so preposterous that I cannot even begin to fathom how this man was able to gather his wits enough around him to project that kind of filth out of his mouth to his current spouse. Yeah, I think that's beyond the pale. And then to make matters worse, his family are also pressuring her, and I've gotten to that place where they're holding her in high resentment because she has refused to accede to their request that she name her unborn child after the dead wife. Why would she? Let's face it, why would she? And I'm just using this story as an instance to talk about selfishness, lack of empathy. What is empathy? Empathy, which is not the same thing as sympathy. If I'm going to break it down in very simple terms, sympathy is where you're removed from the situation completely. It's like you're on the outside looking in and you're like, oh, I feel bad for this person, I'm really sorry for you, and that's it. Empathy is walking a mile in the other person's shoes, trying to relate to what the person is going through, from within, from your heart. Of course, these are not dictionary definitions. I'm just trying to put my own layman's understanding of what these words mean. So when you're empathetic, it means that you're able to internalize how the other person is feeling. And because we're all human beings, it's safe to assume that most of us despise the basic same kind of things, for instance, that universally certain things will trigger anger, hostility, sorrow, sad. So how this man and his family, for that matter, were not able to realize what a very callous request this is something that I don't understand and cannot put my finger on. I don't get it. I don't know where that's coming from. Yeah. And I personally am at that place where I'm really thinking, if you were that committed to your wife who is now dead, maybe you shouldn't have remarried. Yeah? That way you can spend all your time. Maybe you could put her picture in a corner and stare at it all day if that's what you want to do. I'm sorry if I'm sounding not so nice right now, but sometimes there's a way people put themselves in a place where, you know, they attract this kind of feedback. Why would you like it, for instance, if the roles were reversed and you had married a widow, you know, and not only does she have her dead husband's wedding band on her neck, which she never takes off. I never take my wedding band off. I don't take it off to cook, to bath, to anything. I don't take it off. So I know people who are like that will probably never take it off. I don't even take it off to go to bed. So she has her wedding, you know, her dead husband's wedding band around the neck. You've you know, let that be. And then now she's pregnant and she's insisting that, oh, she's going to name this unborn baby, she's going to name him, Ryan. And because you're not feeling it, her entire family, I don't even understand how the man's family, how the in-laws managed to hone in on this, and why did he even invite them into the conversation? I don't understand. Yeah? So, I think that in our relationships, be it marriage, be it just, you know, the dating scenario where you're really invested in, you know, each other, where it's a serious relationship. It's not just, we're just feeling each other out. If it's a serious relationship, please try to take your partner's feelings into consideration. It matters. It's a show of kindness. It's a show of thoughtfulness. Some things just aren't done. If you know for a fact that if your partner did this to you, it would hurt you, why do you want to do it to your partner? How do you justify it? And that's one instance. It was the most shocking instance I could find, and that's why I opened with it. But I'm sure that we can all relate. Sometimes we have been the ones throwing out that kind of negativity, you know. And then when the person reacts, you know, with the benefit of hindsight, you're like, I really don't know what I was thinking. That wasn't well thought out. I shouldn't have even brought it up. Yeah. And if you're with somebody who genuinely cares about you, of course, they'll let bygones be bygones. You'll move on and everything. But that small dent in the relationship has appeared. So I think it's very important, not just in man-woman relationships or in romantic relationships. I think it's very important in the way we relate to each other to try and apply a bit of empathy, even with subordinates. Yeah. So many of us are guilty of a situation where, you know, I keep coming back to the house help situation because that's where, particularly housewives, that's where so many of us really get it wrong. You know, we treat them as subhuman, you know. We treat them in the coldest, most callous ways. Do you ever stop to think that this person has not sat down for 2 to 3 hours today? So, some of us have living help. So they are at our beck and call always. And we misuse and abuse that. There is no closing time, essentially. You can wake them up from sleep at 1 a.m., you know, to embark on one long chore like that, you know. That doesn't really even need to be done at 1 a.m. It's something that could be done in the early hours of the day, the next day. But if you are relating with this person from a place of empathy, you'd be thinking, okay, most likely this person is sleepy, tired, has had a long day. Because that's what they're around the house to help with all those small things that keep the house functional. So let me let him or her be so that they can rest properly and be re-energized to be their best self tomorrow. Some of us have housemates who are young adults and they don't have even one day off. Never. These are people who are at a point in their life where they should be in relationships. Let's face it. But you keep this person in your home 24/7. And she's 24 years old, 25, she's in her mid-20s. You know, the only other people are around, maybe the driver, maybe some other male relation, and all this. You take frequent breaks, you travel, you go out and all this. But you don't stop for a minute to think, it's been 2 weeks. The only time this girl has seen outside my premises was when she went to the market. And maybe she even has family in that same town. You cannot afford to give her 6 hours on a Sunday to go chill with her family or friends and unwind before coming back. And even if your child is acting up, is there a reason? Are you bullying the child? Are you at daggers drawn with the child's father, your husband, and therefore the atmosphere in the house is so toxic that the child just takes that with them to school and heaps it on the tea? Empathy. Empathy matters so much in all the relationships we have. Even at work. Sometimes the nastiest person at the office is not nasty because they're a bad person. That person is nasty because they're going through so much in their own personal life. And yeah, we always come up with these lofty goals of but it's the same brain, it's the same mind, it's the same human being. Not everybody can divorce who they are at home from who they are at work. So a little bit of empathy. It doesn't follow that because that person snapped at you right now, they're necessarily a bad person. It could just be that they're burdened down with life. Hurt people hurt people. That wasn't a mistake, I know exactly what I said. Hurt people hurt people. If you're wholesome and you're fine and you're okay, chances of you hurting somebody else are slim. 0. So, if we go back to the widower, there's a possibility that the guy just hasn't healed. If you properly investigate that situation, there's a possibility that he only married this lady because she reminds him in one way or another of the dead spouse. And that's frightening because you can't compete with the spirit. When people die, most of us tend to place them on a pedestal and nobody can attain that. So you have this wife in the house who is now filled with resentment, feeling hurt and feeling less than somebody who is no longer alive. How do you make that work?